And we're back, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, the number one podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. It's Monday morning, episode 77. I'm your host, Christian Brindle. I'm joined with my co-host, Glenn Shelton. Happy Monday morning, good sir.
Happy Monday. Spring break for many people around the world. Happy spring break. We've got opening week of baseball and the MLB happening this week.
Oh, very good. Very good.
If you want to pretend to be a sports fan, throw in a couple baseball facts somewhere. Christian, you got anything? Do you have anything?
Is A-Rod still playing? What about Derek Jeter?
Derek Jeter.
How about them Yankees? Are they getting along?
A-Rod hasn't played in a very long time. However, he's owner of the T-Wolves, so maybe we can segue this to NBA for you.
Yeah, well,
did you know that?
Might have more to offer.
Did you know he's the owner of the Timberwolves?
Yeah, isn't he like
part owner?
He's a minority owner or like majority owner? I can't remember, but yeah, I knew he was.
He shares ownership. I don't know I can't remember what the exact situation is, but yeah.
Yeah, I watched a video probably in the last year that kind of like went through the whole process of him becoming an owner. Like, they made a deal. Him and his like partner went off to like get funding. And then like they couldn't get the funding. It was like very dramatic. It was extremely like a dramatic, process of him becoming an owner. That's what I remember.
Because there was like a lawsuit, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah. I remember because they were like, we upheld our end of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I remember seeing that in the news. Speaking of, these sports franchises have become a huge business, right? It's not what it used to be.
Did you see
the Celtics?
The news about the Celtics. So
yes.
I'm not mistaken. And correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I read somewhere that was the largest amount of money that a pro sports franchise has been purchased for
in the world. $6.1 billion, which honestly, when you compare it to some of these other franchises, I'm kind of surprised it wasn't even more. I mean, the Celtics is like
iconic. The Celtics have all time the most championships, right?
Yeah.
Of any franchise. I would think they'd go for 10. The most winningest franchise ever in the history of the sport.
Well, the Washington Commanders just sold for like 4 or 5 billion or something. The Commanders, which I guess that just goes to show you the disparity between some of these different sports. But right. I was still honestly surprised. But here's the interesting part, and this kind of segues a little bit into the Medicare industry, is that it was a private hedge fund. So it wasn't the old days, it was some rich dude.
Right.
Some rich dude came in.
Jerry Buss type figure.
Yes.
Dr. Jerry Buss.
What's the Raiders on? Mark Davis.
Mark
Davis. Yeah.
And his dad was the owner, right? Al Davis.
Yeah. Or it's a family. Yeah. Or it's like a family.
Just win, baby. Just win, baby.
Jerry. What's the Dallas Cowboys owner?
Jerry Jones.
Jerry
Jones,
the
son.
Yes. So, but now it's become such a big business. It's a very small pool of individuals who can come in and drop 5-10 billion on a sports franchise. So now you have these situations. I mean, the Utah Jazz is a very similar structure as well. They have like a dozen owners, right?
Including the great Dwayne Wade.
Dwayne Wade
is one of our several owners.
A hedge fund came in and bought the Celtics, to essentially take over ownership and manage them. And, again, this is similar to what we've seen happen in the Medicare space over the years, is private equity coming into the space and getting involved. When the numbers start to get really big, all of a sudden the hedge funds and the really big players start to pay attention, and they're like, oh, we want a piece of that action.
Interesting thing this isn't something I learned recently, probably in the last 6 months. But in the last 6 months, I learned that Patrick Bet-David is a minority owner in the Yankees. He bought some ownership into the Yankees, and he talked about that, about like the process of being
Wow.
for that. It's not something that you can just do. It's not like buying a stock. He had to be like, basically like he had to, get
That's
in
crazy.
rooms, and he had to know somebody that knew somebody that vouched for him. And, so very interesting situation there, because, you talk about iconic franchises. You could make the argument the Yankees is probably the most iconic franchise, right? Of any sport.
Yeah. Top 1% of any sport, any franchise, I would say, as far as, if you were to just say what sports team comes to mind, like regardless of the sport, Yankees would be in probably my top 3 for sure.
Yeah,
Top
they'd
5.
have to be, right? Like,
yeah.
You got to think. So if I had to put together 3, like maybe I put together one from each sport to keep it fair, of the big 3 sports anyway, I'd say probably the Lakers, the Yankees, and then in football, I'd probably say either the Cowboys or the Patriots, even though the Cowboys don't win.
Yeah, but the Cowboy, again, it's just iconic. Well, so let me ask you some of those. Yeah, it's the branding, right? Yeah, it's all about the branding. So if the Lakers were to sell today, would they sell for more than the Celtics did?
If you asked me before the sale, I probably would have said similarly, but man, you got to think yes.
I would think so, but now I don't know.
Okay, so you think about the Celtics. I don't want to go off into Pluto with this, but I do have this thought. You think about the
That's
Celtics,
the hour, you guys. Thank you for listening.
We'll talk about FEMA SEPs tomorrow.
We hope you enjoyed this episode about NBA branding.
So would you think about the Celtics, right? They have more rings than the Lakers, but it's not by much. It's by a couple. 11 of those came from the Bill Russell era, when there was like 7 teams and everyone was white except for like 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah.
And like Wilt scoring 100 on all the little white guys.
Right.
He's like, oh! Dunking. Have you ever seen this?
Yeah. Oh, I've watched.
Are the best.
Yeah.
They're my favorite.
Oh yeah.
Like he's not even jumping that high.
Just catching and turning. He's just like,
yeah. He's finger rolling over people's heads because their heads were so down below him. You couldn't finger roll into the basket like that today. You get your ass blocked. But no one could even it's like an adult playing with a basketball with a kid, like you hold the ball up in the air, the kid's like jumping. Yeah. It's basically was Wilt. But anyway, 11 of those rings came from that era. If you take that era out of it, the Lakers have a lot more success in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s than the Celtics do. They have a lot more rings. And so I think you have like more relevant game-changing players that have played for the Lakers opposed to the Celtics. They're both iconic, great franchises, but I think the more modern success overall probably makes the Lakers more relevant in like pop culture.
Well, and this will be my final thoughts on sports franchises, but the Dodgers, it's been fascinating to see what's been going on with the Dodgers, and that's another one where Magic Johnson talked about him getting ownership into the Dodgers and that whole thing, because he had to pony up like $300 million,
right,
to get like a quarter or something. I mean, it's another crazy story, but when you look at the brandability behind the franchise, the Dodgers have successfully acquired some of the most famous Asian baseball players in the world. And because of that, the stats that I've heard about Japan.
That dude that got like the $1 billion contract, right? He's one of them.
So Shohei Ohtani. And then they picked up a pitcher from Japan as well, Yamamoto. And I went to a Dodgers game last year. That was what my son wanted for his birthday. So I go to a Dodgers game, and I can tell you that they've tapped into a niche that almost zero other baseball teams have tapped into. They're on the West Coast, right? So, you're going to get more of an Asian American demographic over there. They play games over. They just played a game in Japan last week. So that brand, the Dodgers brand, is getting a worldwide recognition that other Major League Baseball teams are not getting. And that is adding to the bottom line for sure. There's no doubt in my mind. There's jerseys being sold. There's tickets being sold. There's, bobbleheads being sold. There's a lot more revenue being generated because of the marketing, the brandability, what they're doing.
The Yao Ming effect.
Yes.
Like, you know, Houston,
get back into the NBA. You're safe spot. Get back into the NBA.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, similarity.
How do I segue back?
The Jeremy Lin effect.
Linsanity.
Like Yao Ming's rookie year, he averaged 13 a game and was a starter for the All-Star game because of all the votes that were coming in from Asia for the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's shift gears a little bit.
All right.
We can keep going. I wanted to start off the show today.
huge episode today, too, you guys. Another crazy change of events in industry politics.
Yep. And there's a lot to be said about that. I wanted to start off the show today, though, just like with a topic that kind of came up, I feel like over the weekend that was super interesting to me, just having a conversation with someone. And I was like, this would be a great thing to start a podcast with on Monday. So it's kind of a little bit of a, polarizing conversation, but, there's always mass discussions amongst performance-based industries such as ours, such as insurance, right? And that is like, how hard should you work? Should you work extremely hard? Should you try to outwork everyone around you? Should you, try to will your goals into existence? Or should you go for, work-life balance? There's so many agents that they're like, I don't want to be a 7-figure agent. I want to be happy. I've heard that so many times, and I think it's an interesting topic. It could possibly be its own pod, but I thought it might be a good introduction topic, dip the toe into the water to kind of see how the conversation goes. I have a lot of thoughts on it, but when I say that to you, where does your mind go, right? Where does your mind go with that topic of conversation?
I think this becomes super subjective. It's something that I don't think we could talk for hours on the show about this, and I don't think it's something where we can like uncover an answer or truth or what's the right move here for the individual agent. Because for some of you, this is a post-retirement secondary income. Some of you might be 65, 70 years old. You've already retired from your career. You're a part-time insurance agent. You're doing this to stay busy. You're doing this to add a little extra income to your monthly budget. But the idea of trying to scale up an agency or an FMO or to make 7 figures is not even close to what you desire as an agent. And some of you are in the complete opposite of that. Some of you are really trying to scale. I see you guys. I see you guys in the comments. I see you guys in the groups. I see the moves you're making. I'm talking to you guys at industry events. I know, the struggles you're going through that I've already been through, that Christian and I are still going through. And you're on the opposite end of that spectrum. You're willing to make the sacrifices. You're willing to grind. You're willing to, put capital back into your business to see it grow. So I don't know how we could even answer this for the actual individual agent. So this is where, and we've talked about this on the pod before, this is where self-awareness becomes super important, because you need to understand what you want. You need to be self-aware of what you want and what you're capable of. And then from there, you can kind of draw the roadmap. But that was kind of my first thoughts when I was thinking about this stuff. But what do you think? What I know this is a near and dear to your heart. Well, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think you hit I think you hit it right on the head in terms of something that I think about is like, I think being self-aware of where you want to go and what your ambitions are is extremely important in terms of answering this question. I think that if you're somebody that simply just wants to stay afloat and float by, like, it's probably one of those things where you can have a very balanced life, if you will. The more I've studied extremely successful people, oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes their life is somewhat out of balance. Doesn't mean it's in chaos, but it might lean a little bit more towards something opposed to something else, right? Like, it's really hard to get real balance. And it doesn't mean it's like 90-10, but it could be like 65-70% towards kind of leaning into kind of what you do. I think if you're somebody that wants to build a massive business and you're somebody that really has a big appetite and hunger for, becoming very successful, or maybe you're someone that's starting off, or maybe you're somebody that's in the business and you feel down because you're disappointed with the results that you've had and you want more. I think for those people, I think a question that I'd ask yourself is, am I doing everything that I can be doing right now? Like, when I finish my day, can I look back and say I did everything that was in my power within reason?
Right.
Like, I'm not going to the bathroom, crap like that. Like, but am I doing everything that I could be doing in that day to push my business forward? If you're one of those people, right? If you're like, you're starting off, let's say you're trying to make it. Let's say like you have bills to pay, right? Did you do everything in that day that you needed to do to propel your business forward? And a lot of people, when they look back on it and they self-reflect on the end of their day, they're like, well, probably not. I probably could have done a little bit more. For me, I'm somebody that's notoriously been a bit of a workaholic.
A bit. That's an understatement.
The last like year or so, I've kind of been on a little bit of a journey of like figuring out, okay, how do I balance my life better and everything like that. And I think I've come to the conclusion where like, I'm not going to have that. I'm not that person. and that's, and you know what? I think that's okay. It doesn't.
But again, it's like, what is balance even though, right? That's like saying like, I'm going to have a normal life. I'm a normal person. I'm going to have a normal, like, what does that even mean? Like, that's so, again, it's super subjective, right?
Super subjective. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
But I think people have like a vision in their mind of what that looks like. It's like something out of a movie, right? Like, white picket fence, spouse, 2 or 3 kids, barbecuing on the weekends, that kind of thing. I think like for me, I have things that are important to me in my life, and I move things around in my life to really make sure that I'm getting the things in that I care about. But I'm on a mission. I have a goal. I want to propel and build the company as big as I possibly can. And that requires me sacrificing a lot and putting a lot into what I'm doing. I'm not somebody that's going to be destined to live a regular life. You know what I mean? And I think like some people, I think this happens on both ends of the spectrum. I think people that just don't have the same ambitions and they just want to have, I don't know, whatever they want to have. They want to build a nice business, want to maintain it. They get caught up in the advice of people saying, oh, you got to work. and they don't find happiness because it's not what they want. Then on the flip side, I think you have people that have huge ambitions. They want to build massive businesses. They want to do huge things. And they get caught up in the people being like, you got to take it easy. Slow down, little Billy. Calm down, little Billy. And they don't find happiness because they're not going after what they want. So I think it's an interesting conversation because it depends on the person that's listening. But, I think having that self-awareness is really, really important, and identifying, like Patrick Bet-David talks about it in Your Next 5 Moves, his book. First off, like identifying what it is that you want and where you want to go, because if you can't figure that out, you can't determine what's going to make you happy. And I think that's a great point. I think that's very insightful and very important in this conversation.
I think a good way to measure kind of where you're at, little Billy, someone said, yes, little Billy makes a daily appearance on the pod, you guys, as you know. I think a good way of measuring this, as far as whether you're working too much or maybe you're not working enough, you can kind of take a look at your habit. Like, are you really struggling to be happy? Are you miserable? And if you are, is this because you're not working enough? Is this because you're working too much? I think, and there was someone early on in the industry that was part of the FMO that I was working at, and his schedule, just to show you how different and subjective I think this routines can be, right? His schedule was, he would literally work like 24/7 for like 3-4 days straight, and then he'd crash out for like 3 or 4 days. And when I say 24/7, he's doing like technology related projects on the back end for the FMO. Like he was doing a lot of front end stuff. He had been in the industry for a long time. He also kind of had a tech mindset, so he'd be doing stuff on the tech side. So he would literally be up like almost all night. And so that ended up becoming kind of his pattern, his routine, almost like a nurse or doctor. He's working 3 or 4 days on, and then he's off 3 or 4 days. And so I think this idea of like what's normal and what your routine looks like, I think is just completely subjective. I think you have to figure out what makes you happy, and you have to be happy with the effort and the results that you're putting in. I mean, the machine's very clear, right? That's the beautiful part about this industry, is almost always the person that puts in X amount of effort should see X amount of results. There's obviously lots of variables in between about, how much of one goes in versus what comes out the other, how much money you're spending. Like, it's not a direct 1 + 2 = 3, but again, we all have the same insurance license. We all work with the same carriers. We all get the same renewals, right? Like all of these, there's a lot of fixed variables that we all have the same access to. But at the end of the day, how you manage those variables is really up to you as an individual. And I think it really is. It's a big self-awareness thing. But yeah, I think people get caught up in that idea. Like you said, like, I'm not going to be, I feel like I've had that same realization before, because it's like, but then what that realization really is you're letting go of what other people's beliefs are. Yeah. You're letting go of society's, it has nothing to do with, I'm letting go of balance. I'm letting go of this narrative that other people have put out there. Steve Jobs has that quote that says like I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like, living life through other people's dogma is like the worst thing you can do. Live through your own beliefs, live for your own thoughts and what you think is right. Don't live for, what the narrative is or the mindset of the overall average person is, or the average agent. That's bullshit.
I was listening was, again, well, not recently, in the last year sometime. And I'll clarify. I was listening to an interview that Andrew Tate did. Super polarizing, controversial name. I understand. Don't agree
every
with
morning.
a
Every
lot of
morning,
what.
Christian
No,
wakes
no, no,
up,
no, 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 no.
hits
But
an hour of Andrew Tate.
no, no, no. But he does. So, he says a lot of crazy, wild shit that I don't agree with. He says also a lot of stuff that I'm like, that's super thoughtful, very insightful. One thing he said was like, he said, instead of asking myself, did I do a good job today? Did I work hard today? At the end of the day, you should ask yourself, am I proud of what I did today? Am I proud of myself at what I did today?
I like that.
And I was like, wow. I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that ever. And I think that's a great way to look at it, right? Like, is what I did today moving me closer or farther away from what I want and what my goals are? And based on that, am I proud of what I did today? Am I proud of how I conducted myself today, how I handled myself today, the work that I put in today, the effort that I put in today? And I thought that was a really, a really good way of really kind of solidifying that and really analyzing that at the end of each day. And I think that's how people should really look at it is, again, self-awareness. Where do I want to go? What do I want in my life?
Yeah.
What do I want my business to look like?
Yep.
And is what I did today, do I feel confident that I moved in that direction based on my actions today?
I like it. I think that's a good way to measure it versus trying to measure it through like hours worked. It's because it's like that's
Impact.
always going to be a moving target. Yeah, impact. Yeah, 100%.
We could talk about this for the rest of the show. I want to make sure we have time for the main topic at hand. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about this show's sponsor. Glenn, take it away with who this show's sponsor is.
Guys, today's episode of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by Hire Heroes, your number one spot to get a vetted virtual assistant for your agency. If you are looking at hiring a virtual assistant, someone who can come in and help you with low revenue or no revenue generating tasks, head over to hireheroes.com. We have a pool of vetted virtual assistants that we are either already working with or have been working with and recently in the past at the Lead Heroes team, the Lead Heroes call center. They're going to come with a baseline of information, of knowledge about the senior insurance space, and we can transplant them into your agency to help you stay focused on your highest revenue generating task, almost always increasing your overall revenue very quickly. So do not wait. Hire your hero today and head over to hireheroes.com. That's hireheroes.com.
Boom. Okay, let's shift gears into the topic at hand this morning. And that is the news that dropped last week.
The news!
In the form of a CMS letter, right? Release, if you will. Some of our favorite things, right? Never know what it's going to say on the other side of it. And that was CMS officially putting it out there that they had made the decision to pull back their previous decision to take away agents' abilities to write applications with the FEMA SEP for Medicare Advantage and Part D prescription drug plans. For those of you that aren't aware of this, though, and kind of like what's been going on with this, we talked about it on this show when it first came out that they had made this decision to take this away from agents. So FEMA SEP, it's disaster SEP, special enrollment period, right? A special enrollment period meaning a reason you can enroll someone outside of their normal enrollment periods, AEP, OEP, getting on to Medicare, IEP, all of those things. FEMA is a disaster SEP. So let's say you live back east, you get slammed with a hurricane, house washes away.
Yep.
Like your house is literally like perfectly preserved, but it's floating in the ocean. You know, you may qualify for a special enrollment period to change your Medicare Advantage plan. It's a natural disaster, right? Fires in California, tornadoes, whatever, right? And it's an SEP that has become extremely polarized because one could make the argument that it has been This episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by the Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit. Guys, it is a fact that getting around other people that are chasing the same ambitions and destinations in their business as you is a great thing, and it can propel your business years ahead than not getting around people and networking and going to live events. The Seven Figure Medicare Agent Summit is the premier event. Every year we hear year after year after year that it is the event that has the best content. So many events nowadays, they do a lot of pitching from the stage. They're really just there to sell you things. And if nothing more than that, they're just a bunch of vendors put together and they're just nothing but networking. There's no content. The summit is the best of both worlds, you guys. The summit puts together great, fantastic speakers from all ends of the industry and also get you in a room with like-minded individuals from all over the country that are trying to build their business just like you. The summit this year is taking place in Salt Lake City from June 22nd to 24th at the Hilton Hotel. We still have tickets available. We'd love to have you come out for the event. We are over 50% sold out at the time of recording this, but get your ticket now while you can. This event will sell out, and we'd love to see you there in Salt Lake City. Abused, no better word to say it.
Yes.
By a lot of people without the industry. And so CMS made the decision previously that it was going to be taken away from agents being able to use it. In fact, a carrier directly couldn't use it. A person to be able to use it would have to reach out to Medicare directly, 1-800-MEDICARE, enroll into a plan with that. They could not go through any agent or anything like that. And that was CMS's attempt essentially to prevent these abuses from continuing. So fast forward to last week, they put out this announcement stating that this will not be happening anymore. And it almost sounded like, based on the wording in the memo, that they are still trying. They're going to go back to the drawing board to decide what they're going to do about this SEP. But for now, business as usual. Glenn, what was your reaction when you saw this? What's the first thing that came to your mind?
It was a total deja vu moment for me because this felt like the FCC ruling all over again. I mean, the FCC ruling came down to the midnight hour. The FCC ruling was just literally, from a business perspective, it was literally like the last minute before it went into effect. Literally, right. Because it was late Friday afternoon. This is going into effect Monday morning. So we had a little bit more time outside OEP before this went into effect. I mean, not a whole lot of time. I mean, you're talking about a week, really, right? And it's spring break this week. So they were probably like, oh, shit, we got to get this out before spring break, right? I mean, for some of the country. So that was my first thought. My first thought was like, oh, okay. So this is what we're doing now is we're rolling back, which I'm not necessarily against. We already kind of talked right previously about the thoughts and feelings behind this, as far as whether we thought this was a good or bad thing. But now that it's been reversed, the question is this now a good or bad thing? It's tough because similar to the FCC rule, there's a lot of call centers, FMOs, IMOs, and agencies that I think had already charted new paths for the off season. Based on conversations that I've had, I've already talked a little bit on the show about some of these conversations. We just rolled out dental vision hearing leads at Lead Heroes last week. We have fixed cost dental vision hearing leads at Lead Heroes. That's partially in response to the demand for more opportunities in the off season. And there's plenty of people, again, that I've talked to that they've already charted this new path, partially because of this disaster SEP going away. So now that it's, how many people are going to completely change direction just because this is back now? I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be, everyone's like, oh, okay, forget everything I planned. We're going to keep abusing disaster SEP instead this offseason. I don't know how much of that's really going to take place. The comments were really interesting to me. There was a ton of commentary about this, about why this happened. I saw people say the lobbying worked. The call centers lobbied for this. They got it back. I saw people say Medicare.gov realized they couldn't handle the calls. So they brought it back because there's no way they could handle all the calls from people calling in trying to get this SEP. But
everyone's got a theory.
Everyone has their own theory. So that was like my initial reaction to this, though. What was your first reaction when you saw it?
Yeah, I mean, I think my first reaction was kind of similarly to yours. I was like, it was very deja vu for the FCC situation. I was like, oh, wow. Because, it really is not quite at the last hour, but pretty close, right?
Very close.
And, who knows why this actually happened? I mean, maybe it was lobbyists. It's looking like it's a very probable possibility that Oz will be sworn in. Maybe behind the scenes, he's, having more influence than you think.
I like this theory.
I don't know.
Like, damn it.
Because
was you think you?
When was it that
smile.
CMS?
Look at that smile. He's smirking, you guys.
But you got to think, like, when was it that CMS put this first ruling out? I want to say it was January or December or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
What would make them change paths in a few months like that? You know what I mean? Probably a power struggle. That's what I think. Like, why would you put a ruling out and then within not even a quarter, you're like, just kidding, we were wrong? Like, it sounds to me like
it could be blowback from some of these bigger call centers and agencies. There could have been potentially some big blowback where they were like, you guys are nuts if you're taking this away, right? Like,
and it could be that too, right? At the end of the day, it is all speculation, which, we've been accused. We've been accused of being habitual speculators on this podcast.
Ooh, give me a T-shirt. Habitual speculator.
Habitual professional habitual speculator.
Professional habitual speculator.
But at the end of the day, like, who knows exactly why it's happening? But those are the first things that came to my mind. I think that the next question is this good, bad, or what is this? Is this good, bad? Does it not really matter for the industry? Is it good, bad for agents? I think there's two sides of this. I think in some ways it's good, in some ways it's bad. I'll talk about the good first. Anytime CMS takes an enrollment period that a customer can use to change their plan and makes it to where they have to go through them to use it, it opens up a possibility to where you can lose a client and there's nothing you can do about it. Right? So I'm not in favor of that. I don't like that at all. I like anytime somebody is able to compliantly change their plan. I think it's fair that agents should be allowed to assist them with that enrollment.
True.
I don't like it to where it's like, okay, they can change their plan, but they have to go directly to us and cut you out and sorry, not sorry, little Billy. And so I think that's the good side of this. I don't feel like all around that's ever good for an agent. I'd be more comfortable if they just completely banned it altogether and no one could use it, period, regardless of how it's used. I'd be more comfortable with that than it still being around, but an agent can't assist with the enrollment. I just think that that's not a good standard to set whatsoever. So that's the good. Now let's talk about the bad. the reason why it's such a controversial enrollment period is a lot of you have probably seen it's been used by bigger organizations, call center like organizations, to churn business all year round. And it's blatant. It's being used in like, there might be like a hurricane in Florida and someone fills out an app in like Wisconsin and says hurricane SCP.
Yeah.
FEMA. Yeah. It's like, but there was no hurricane, but no one checks. It's like, all right, you're good. You're in,
right.
Plan changed. And so,
well, that's my understanding of this, right? Is that this is essentially a way to guaranteed issue switch a Medicare Advantage beneficiary year round. And that
so it's going to
no one's ever been, has anyone ever been rejected for using this that you're aware of? Have you ever heard a story, seen a post, a comment, I use this, it got rejected by the carrier?
Yes. I don't want to go into details. I don't want to go into details.
You had to really think about that, though.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like a common. Yeah.
Not a lot, but once or twice. I think it a lot of times comes down to the carrier. I think some carriers were actually doing a pretty decent job of actually taking a look at the application and seeing if there was a viable disaster that happened in the location that the app was coming from. Other carriers were basically like, we'll take the business. And I think people that were doing this habitually figured out which carriers. Yes.
Word of the day on the pod today. Habitual.
It's just an excuse to say bitch and get away with it. I was going to say that. Switch it in. Oh, sorry, guys. Sorry, audience.
Read my mind on that one. You're being so habitual today.
But I think the people that were doing this routinely figured out which carriers would not check it at all and just take all the business and which ones wouldn't, and then they would purposely submit business for the carriers that would take it without any issue. I don't think that's great for an agent either. But if I had to pick one or the other, I'm more in favor of this ruling and it staying as is than the path that they were choosing to go. I think it's better if your competitors can use it against you and your job is just to retain your client, than if someone wanted to use it, you can't help them at all. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So I think there's positives and negatives on both sides, but if I had to lean one way or the other with this decision, I think overall it's more relatively positive. It's kind of my thought.
I would love to know what the volume of applications that are being issued annually are utilizing this SEP. Because that would tell me a lot. That would tell me a lot if I knew the actual number. And I'm sure CMS knows. I'm sure there's a way they can look that up and pull that information. And it would tell me about how much this is being abused. It would also tell me about whether CMS could handle that volume, because I thought that was an interesting comment that someone made, is that, again, speculative. What if CMS looked at the numbers and said, oh man, there's no way we could handle this type of volume, right?
That might be the case.
Say, that could have been part of it, right? Is maybe someone rolled these rules out or said, hey, let's do this. This is being abused, right? We need to get rid of this. And then they pulled the numbers and they're like, oh, wow, there was 2 million applications that we issued last year utilizing this. And if we started handling all of that volume on top of everything else, there's no way,
Yeah.
I'd love to know the real number.
Yeah.
What would you guess? What would you guess the number is? 2 million, 3 million, 4 million?
I don't even know where I'd start with that guess. I have no idea. I really don't have any idea. But I think it was probably, and maybe it's not even in the millions, right? Maybe we're talking in the hundreds of thousands of enrollments.
Might not even.
Millions is a lot. Like, if you look at some of these carriers, like they'll do 2 to 5 million a year in Medicare Advantage enrollments, the whole company. So like if you're talking 2 million just from SEP, that would be like a third of all in Medicare Advantage apps that are being put in. I don't know if it's that much, but maybe it's in the hundreds of thousands potentially. Like it's hard to know, it's hard to say, but I think that it was certainly a problem that was being used enough to where it was a red flag. It raised, some red flags for CMS, maybe even on some of the carrier side. And like everything, anytime anything becomes a red flag for CMS, they're not terrible at identifying a problem. That's never been their issue.
Right.
It's the resolution to it.
Enforcing
it's always the wrong one. It's always the wrong resolution. It's always like, okay, let's keep the SEP, but they have to call us. It's like, well, that's a bad idea. Everyone can see that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea for you. You're getting all these calls now. You're screwing over insurance agents that maybe have never used this illegitimately in their whole career, right? But maybe once in a blue moon, there's a hurricane and they help a client, right? That maybe missed an enrollment period. That's the purpose of the election period. You're punishing that person because of someone that has nothing to do with them did. And so it's classic CMS from the standpoint of like, identifying the problem and presenting a solution that doesn't resolve anything that causes more problems.
Right.
Creating more problems. Like, well, how do we take this problem and turn it into 3? We want more problems. Almost like that's kind of what their train of thought is.
Here's something that came from this that affects my mindset of any future changes now, because we've seen this pattern of we're going to make a radical change and then just kidding, we're not. Again, I'd say the FCC 1-to-1 consent, and now this is really strike 2. Now, anytime there's going to be any type of radical rule change that is being proposed, or, they even set the date, right? It's going to change at this date. Now I'm going to be thinking in the back of my mind, well, maybe this isn't actually going to happen. Now I'm going to be thinking, well, when are they going to announce the retractment? When is this going to be retracted? Because we're seeing this pattern kind of emerge where, oh, just kidding, we're not going to do that. Oh, we can't do that. And again, it's hard to say why. It could be the new administration. Could be they realized it was a bad idea. It could realize that, we can't handle, CMS can't handle that type of volume of calls, of applications. Could be a number of things. But I don't know. It's like, if you're going to do it, do it. If you're not going to do it, why announce it in the first place? It's frustrating. It's confusing for everybody.
And that's kind of why I don't know, my head jumped to the place where it's like, maybe one person made the decision to do this and another person is making the decision to do away with it. That's kind of why my head went into that direction. But who knows at the end of the day, right? I wonder, because this routine of make a change your mind, that kind of thing, has been this current CMS leadership. I don't recall too many situations like this prior to that.
Right.
Do you?
Right. No. I mean, not unless you wanted to talk about like proposals, but when, proposals aren't actual rules going into effect. Proposals are just stuff they're throwing at the wall, essentially.
Yeah. Proposals is almost like public communication of something we're talking about internally.
Yeah.
We're thinking about this kind of thing. So it might just be part of the course for this current CMS leadership that we have, which their days are numbered, right? They're out probably sooner rather than later. I did a search the other day about how long it usually takes for CMS.
That's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask you that. Yeah. What's the deets on this?
typically we're looking at 3 to 5 months from when they were nominated. So think about when not when they went through the hearing, but from when they were nominated. So I believe Oz was nominated in November. So 3 to 5 months, we're probably right along that, maximum time frame. There have been some that have been 8 months. There was one that was 11 months. But typically we're looking at 3 to 5 months. So seems to me, and also in our lifetime, my friend, there has not been a CMS administrator that has been nominated that didn't get in. It's never happened.
There's no way he doesn't get it.
Yeah, right. Like, is he going to be the first that doesn't get sworn in when he's not?
Especially when we tore that hearing apart. When you look at that hearing, he had bipartisan support.
Yeah,
he totally had bipartisan support. Not to mention, the party that nominated him has majority. On top of that, he has bipartisan support. There's no way he doesn't get in my opinion. I would bet the farm that he does get in. It's just a matter of when, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Okay, so circling back to FEMA SEP.
Yeah.
All in all, your gut reaction, good or bad for agents and good or bad for the industry? The answers might be different for those two questions.
So originally I was supportive of this. Originally I was supportive because, again, kind of the idea that a call center could contact your client, utilize this SEP, and try to roll your client. I looked at it from that angle originally, that this is a positive change for the average little Billy agent, where they don't have to worry about this SEP being used against them.
Mm-hmm.
That was my original take when we discussed this, if I remember correctly. Now that this is being rolled back, I do feel that, anything that empowers more people to contact CMS directly and to potentially have that application written, I don't think that's a good thing for the industry. If and percentage wise, like you're saying, I mean, millions a crazy number, or maybe it's not. Who knows, right? Yeah. It also probably is directly reflective of how many actual disasters there are, right? If hurricane season's insane, maybe a million's not a crazy number at all, right? Or maybe if the year doesn't have a lot of actual disasters, maybe that code really doesn't get used that much comparatively. So who knows what the real number is? But
it's also a thing too that I know for a fact was being used even when there was no disasters happening at all.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, there's no hurricanes, there's no fires, there's nothing going on. It's like, just put it down, it'll go through. You're in Wyoming.
Corn season was rough in Nebraska. We had
a disaster.
A disaster. I like what you said today, though, about the retention. I like what you said, because I feel like that's a good way of looking at it, where if someone's using it against you, it's a call center, it's another agent, and whether it's a legit disaster or it's just being abused, it's fraud, right? They're not supposed to use the code. I like the idea that it's up to you as an agent to retain your client, and you have the same ability to use that code that someone else does, even if they're not playing by the rules. So I like that. Now, so for the average agent, maybe it would have been if you're a small agent and you live in Nebraska, maybe the code going away would have been a benefit for you.
Right.
Now industry-wide, is this a good or bad thing? I would say that this is a good thing for the industry that it's actually back, because, again, I don't support more business going directly through CMS. And this is one of those things too, where it's like, even though we both know and we both heard and seen instances of this SEP being abused. There's no doubt in my mind. We both could probably go into details on that. That doesn't justify it being ripped away from everybody, right? This goes back to the few bad apples situation where, there's a few bad actors who are abusing these SEPs. That doesn't mean it's necessarily fair to have it taken away from everybody. When there are legit disasters happening all the time, all across the country, the fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, all the time. There's
rough
flooding,
corn season,
rough corn productions down in Nebraska. The Packers had another losing season in Wisconsin.
I would put that on an app.
Could you imagine?
No, I won't do it.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine? Packers missed Super Bowl again. Horrible season.
On most
disaster.
On most enrollments, you can put SEP other or SEP reason, and you can type in like what the reason is.
Yeah. Could you imagine?
SEP, the Packers lost just this past weekend.
Approved.
Client is in distress. Member is in distress.
Packers had a disaster of a season.
Packers lost by 40 yesterday.
Client it was a disaster.
It's a disaster.
You have to include disaster in there, obviously.
Yeah. Yes.
Disastrous, maybe it's subjective, you guys. I don't know. Maybe.
The definition of a disaster is subjective, okay? It's going to depend on your definition of a disaster. I want to move into final thoughts on this episode today.
Hang on. What is your? I want to hear really fast. Maybe this could be your final thoughts, but
yes,
average agent compared to industry wide, good, bad.
Yeah. I think for the average agent, I like what you said earlier. I do think it kind of depends on where you are. Like if you're in an area, like for example, like Utah, I know this has been used around the clock in Utah. There's not disasters in Utah. We'll have like an earthquake once every 10 years,
Maybe snow this year. We got
right. Like we don't have hurricanes. We don't have we had a tornado in the 90s when I was a kid. It hit the Delta Center. And I remember watching it on the news. I was like 7. Like we don't have disasters here really. So I think if for someone like me, if I was only selling in Utah, let's say, I'd probably be in favor of it completely going away because I'm like the chances of somebody calling into CMS and using it to switch away from me if I'm only here in Utah is bad. If I'm in like a place like Florida that has disasters all the time, hurricanes every year, place like Texas, like I would feel some kind of way. So I think overall, it does kind of depend on where the agent is. But if I had to give an answer, I'd say good for the agent because I don't like them basically being incentivized to go directly through CMS. I think that's a lose situation no matter the way you slice it. Good for the industry, I would say so for the same reason. I don't think it's a slippery slope, right? If they realize they can send people directly through CMS and CMS can, let's say, somehow competently handle the enrollments and the volume. And I don't think the volume would be, this is probably something they didn't realize, volume wouldn't be the same amount of enrollments they're getting because people wouldn't be able to use it.
For commission.
Right. Like they'd only be able to use it for what is written up to be. So I think it'd be a fraction, a very small percentage of the enrollments that are actually going in. But all in all, I think good. And to kind of add to my final thoughts, guys, I think, I think we'll see a lot of CMS stuff this year, good and bad. I think we'll see a lot as, new leadership comes in, and we'll be covering it every step of the way on this show. So those are my final thoughts. What are your final thoughts, good sir?
Yeah, final thoughts, you guys. I think, well, first and foremost, stay tuned to the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, you guys, because we're going to bring it to you, whether it happens, during the week, on the weekend. We're going to bring you kind of our synopsis of what's going on. So stay tuned. Drop a comment below if you want to get in on Freebie Friday. We gave away 200 dental vision hearing leads on last Friday. Don't know what we're giving away yet this week, but there will be more great giveaways. All you have to do is comment on one of our live streams. Tell us what you're thinking. Ask us a question, anything. Just comment below, and you get entered into the giveaway. But yeah, final thoughts on this specific situation with the reversal. Again, it's I think my gut is that it's frustrating as an agent, as an agency owner, as someone who's a part of the industry. It's frustrating that, we're trying to make plans, as a business owner, you're trying to make plans for the future. And when a new rule is coming into play, sometimes that changes your plan. So it's frustrating to have these reversals. I just want, if we're going to change the rules, let's stick with it. If we're not going to change the rules, don't change the rules. Don't say anything about it. So this one's a little murky as far as was this going to benefit you maybe as an individual? Maybe it would have, or maybe not. Maybe it would have hurt you. And whether it was actually good for the industry or not, I think is a little bit subjective. But I think just stay tuned and be ready. Like you said, I think we'll see more stuff from CMS. We'll see more rules potentially changing. Hopefully, again, cautiously optimistic is the term we've used, is hopefully that we'll see things trend in the right direction as far as less regulation. That's what I'm staying hopeful for. Those are my final thoughts.
Agreed. Well said. Guys, thanks so much for watching all the way to the end of episode 77. Make sure to comment on
Luca's number.
Thank you for being here for the Luca episode.
The Luca episode. The Luca episode.
Even though Josh Giddey handed him one over the weekend with the Bulls. Josh Giddey episode. Josh Giddey episode. Appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end, putting up with our sports talk to start the show. Although fascinating, I felt like, but maybe not to all of you. So appreciate you watching all the way to the end.
We had to bookend the we started with the NBA. We had to bookend it. We had to have a nice NBA close here, you guys, of course.
Yep. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. We certainly appreciate your support. If you're watching on any platform that allows you to watch the replay, please comment #TeamReplay. Make sure to subscribe on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We'd certainly appreciate it. It helps us get found easier by agents who need this information. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Here's to your guys' massive success, and appreciate you watching. Thanks, everybody.
Happy selling.